Hey team, welcome back. So in the last lecture we talked about getting MySQL and having MySQL Workbench. As I mentioned before, you need to have MySQL Server running on your environment, and then you need to use either MySQL Workbench, which is what I'm gonna be using and what I recommend. Also, I did mention this at the very beginning of the course that it is a requirement for you to be able to set up your environment. So I know that I mentioned that I was using a later version, so I went ahead and updated it. So right now I'm actually working on the latest version of MySQL Workbench, and if you were paying attention, you'll notice that it's exactly the same as the one I had on the screen. So right now this is the latest version, MySQL Workbench. So again, just make sure that your project is set up to work on MySQL, which is what we're gonna do moving forward. Again, very easy. Just get that out of the way before you continue. Please get that out of the way before you continue, because if you continue to use H2, you're not gonna have problems per se. It's just that you're gonna be moving a lot slower, because I think we're at a point where we want to start keeping the data that we are gonna be working with, the test data that we're gonna be creating along the way. Cool, thank you. All right, so getting that out of the way right now, MySQL Workbench and MySQL Server are up and running, as well as my Java server. So I'm gonna stop this now, and we're gonna start taking care of business. And the first thing is that we have already implemented the add project task, and we have already implemented the find the project backlog by ID, and so far we have implemented the happy path. Okay, we have implemented the happy path in the sense that right now we depend on the project to exist, and if the project that we're trying to create the project task on, or if the project that we're trying to find or retrieve the backlog from doesn't exist, then I don't think we're handling that very well right this second. So why don't we just go and test that out right now? The first thing that we're going to do now is, before we even do that, is we never tested this exception here. So I just want to, and when I say this exception, is when we create a new project task in an existing project. So right now that project actually exists on my database, because like I said, I went ahead. I stopped my server. Sorry guys. I went ahead and did it all offline when I was testing my connection. And right now this is persisted on my database. I don't even have to go create it again. All right. So I can get the project by ID, and I can get also the backlog in that project based on the project ID, and I have 3 stories there, which is fine. But right now we have to, I want to test, just because I want to make sure that everything is fine, and we never really tested that. I want to make sure that this not blank thing is working whenever I pass it either blank or null. So first I'm going to try and pass it null. Blank. And perfect, we get a error message. I'm going to try and pass it, try and pass a proper one again. Perfect, it creates it. And now I'm going to, remember the first one was blank, now I'm going to try and pass it null, meaning that not even the attributes is present. And perfect, that request, so that is working out of the box for us, because we did work for the future, right? We created this map validation error service because we knew that we were going to have validation for other objects. So this is what I'm talking about with the dry principle. Don't repeat yourself. It's not only for cleanliness in the code, but it's also for you to be able to reuse things that are, and actually have a spelling mistake here. It's error map, not arrow map. Okay, so I just updated that. I'm just gonna restart, and I'm sorry about my nose, guys. I've been battling something. I'm so sorry that I've been sneezing on you. I'm gonna try and limit that. My apologies. Okay, so I'm just going to try this again. And perfect, everything works. All right, so now what happens? I'm going to just go and try and create again. But what happens is if I try to create on a project that doesn't exist? And again, you guys don't have to take my word for this. You guys don't have to take my word for it. Let's go and see how many projects I have on my database right now. And I can go here to project and click on this little icon here, and it's going to run a query for me. And right now I only have project 1 or test 1. I don't have any other projects on my database right now. So what if I try and create a project testing one that doesn't exist? And we have a 500 server error. And the reason why is because, I mean, that doesn't exist, right? Let's take a look. Null pointer exception, okay? We were trying to hit here, and I'm going to show you where the error actually happens. You know, the error pretty much happens. Oh, what am I doing there? It pretty much happens here, right? Because we do not have a backlog we don't have a backlog object that is, you know, that has a test2 identifier, and obviously that's where it's going to crap out. And just to show you that, I'm gonna put a point there and a debug stop there, and I'm gonna try this again. And basically this should take us right there. And then as you can see, project identifier is passing that, and then I think it's gonna go here straight into the exception. And as you can see here, when we're trying to set the backlog, everything is null, right? Everything is null because there's no way the backlog itself is null, right? We're trying to set a null backlog, and that's why we're getting a null pointer exception. So for this, I think the best thing that we can do, just to keep on practicing a little more, is to create another custom exception for this type of issues. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that you remember how we did it here. We have already created one custom exception with a custom exception response. I want to challenge you to go do this on your own, because we have already done this ourselves. Right? And the only hint that I'm gonna give you before I send you off to try and doing this is that I want for this error to be like this, to display the following. Actually, let me open. I want for the error, the JSON response, to be like this. So if you remember, when we have errors in our JSON, right, because we're sending bad data to the server. Am I not running the server right now? No, I'm not. Okay, I'm just going to run the server. But I know that you guys are familiar with what I'm going to say. I'm just being like overly thorough right now. But basically, I want the error to be like this. I want the error to say project not found. And then just pretty much a descriptive message that says this project doesn't exist, or just plain and simple, project not found. And I want this to be project not found. And I want it to return in this case, right? And remember, you can get requirements like this from other teams. I want the message to be like this, project not found, just like this, and I want it to say project not found. All right, so you go ahead and set up that custom exception. Pause the video now. I'm gonna do the same as well, and I'll see you in a few minutes, and I hope that you were successful in doing this. Okay, so that should be enough time for you to pause the video and come back. So I'm going to start with my solution. So as always, I'm going to come here to the package exceptions, and I am going to create a class called project not found exception response. Okay, so we're going to start by wiring up the response. And as I mentioned before, I do want the message, the object to have the project not found key and then the message. So for this, I'm going to create a string, project not found. Okay, then we're going to create a constructor that takes that that parameter, which is going to be obviously the message, And then I think what we need to do, I'm just gonna set the getters and setters, right? Just to have them there. I don't even think we need them, but anyway, I'm not gonna get into that right now. Okay, now that we have our response, then all we need to do is set up our exception before we start using it. And all we're going to do here is call it project not found exception. Project not found exception. And then we're going to add the response status to this. And this is going to be a BAT request. HTTP BAT request. Cool. Then we're going to extend the runtime exception. And then we're going to set a constructor. And then out of all the constructors available from the runtime exception, and again, I did Command N to get this dialog to actually go to create a constructor. Sorry, I'm just going to backtrack here real quick. Constructor, Command N, create a constructor. I don't know what the key combination is for Eclipse or STS, but I'm pretty sure you can do a 10-second Google search on how to get the menu for that little menu to create the constructor. And again, we're going to take this one, the one that takes a message string. Okay, with this in place, then all we need to do is to go to our custom response entity exception handler. And what we need to do here is pretty much, we can copy paste here, but we have to be very careful. Actually, let me make some more room here. It's getting really uncomfortable here. So all we need to do here to handle this one is public final response entity handle, and we're gonna just delete these project not found exception. Okay, what does this take as a parameter? It takes the project not found exception, comma, oh no, exception, comma, where request, and then what we're returning here is the project not found exception response. And then we're gonna copy this here and we're gonna paste it here, and then this should be all good to go. Good. All right, so take a second to type that out. Then what we are going to do is go back to our backlog service, and we're going to just make sure that we are, to the project task service, and this is basically what we want, where we want to throw the exception, right? Because right now it's throwing the exception right here when it's trying to set a backlog. Okay, so let me just see. Okay, because I just want to make sure that I put this in the right where we need to have it. Actually, I'm gonna get rid of this, and let me just take a look at my notes real quick, just so that we don't make any mistakes. Okay, so basically we have the issue when we try and set it. Okay, so what I am going to recommend is that we wrap all this into a try catch block, because remember we're literally having an exception, a null pointer exception. So I'm just gonna copy the entire piece of code here, where I'm gonna cut it out and put it inside of the catch, and then inside of the try, then exception E, and then if there's an exception, I'm just gonna say throw new project. Give me a moment. Project not found exception, and then here we're just gonna use the message a project not found. Not found. Not found. Not found. Okay, so with this in place, we should be able to restart our server and then try again. And we'll see what we get. And I have the feeling, if I remember correctly, this is we're going to actually scale out of this a lot. We're gonna grow out of this setup a lot once we bring our user in. And I think we're gonna have to refactor this completely. But for now, let's just make it work. And then when our user comes in, we're gonna have to do a lot of refactoring. We're gonna have to be real careful. And at that point, we're gonna take our sweet time, because I really want to do this right. Okay, so let's make sure that we are able to create a new task. So let's make sure that, okay, we get the validation error, then test. We're able to create it, and then if we try and pass it to a project that doesn't exist, then project not found, because project 222, we haven't even created that. And again, if you, just in case you need proof, because you don't have to take my word for it, I should show to you, I should have like proof for you, we don't have that project in our database. Now what happens if we do get that project in our database, and this is just me being pedantic, but I don't care. I really want you guys to, for everything to make sense to you, because I know that I have a few people that only been working with Spring for a few weeks. So we need to make sure that those friends of ours, they are also understanding everything that's happening. Okay. So now what happens if we go and create that project? We can't even create that project because that project actually exceeds our project identifier requirement. But what if I just, take out 1, 2? But before creating that, let me just try and create on project 22 again and test 22. And it's going to say that the project is not found. And then we create the project. Perfect. Hey, come on. That should work. No, actually, no, it shouldn't work. It shouldn't work because that's 6 characters. Oh, my God. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Hey, you know what? The validation's working. I'm a happy man. Okay, test 2. Now it is created. Now we're going to try and post a new project task on test 2 after having gotten a project not found from it. And then it actually works. And as you can see, the ID 7 is 6. This is very interesting. But the project sequence is test 2-1, which is exactly what we wanted. Alright, so now we have our project not found exception for this one. And right now we are, we have completed this initial cycle with the add project task. I'm going to minimize this because that screen looks just too big. And then let's see what happens when we try and find a backlog of a project that doesn't exist. Right? So if I go here, which is where we're getting the backlog, we can get the backlog for test 1. We can get the backlog for test 2. But remember, test 3 doesn't exist. And again, I don't mind proving that to you. It doesn't exist. So let's see what happens here, and let's see if we need to actually handle an exception. Okay, so what we get is an empty object, right? But I still rather tell the user, hey, this project doesn't exist. Okay, so here, remember, we're not handling an exception like we did before. Before we were actually handling a 500 error. Here, we're just getting an empty array because we don't have a list to show because the project doesn't even exist. But still, it is not an exception. So all we need to do here is just perhaps say, let me think for a second here. Let me think for a second how we want to handle this. Hey guys, this is completely normal, okay? Like, so you have to think about how you want to do things, because I'm not really cheating as you guys might think I am. Okay, so you know what I'm gonna do? I am going to do something very simple. I am going to do a project here, project, and then I'm going to do project, and actually, why don't I do? No, you know what? I really want to make sure that the project itself exists. So I am going to bring in the project repository. And again, later on, we can refactor this, or you can refactor this to something that makes more sense to you, or that perhaps is better performance. This is how I'm thinking about it right now. And again, the first step is usually to get code that works, and then you focus on actually making the code better. What I don't like about this design is that it's literally a call to the database to get data that we're literally not doing anything with. And I kind of have a problem with that, but for now, let's just make this work. So basically what we're saying is that if the project is null, obviously the project doesn't exist, so why are we gonna return an empty array? Because then the user could be mistaken and think that the project exists, and then in reality it's a project that doesn't exist. So we want to tell the user, hey, you know what, that project doesn't exist. If you want a project with that key, go with that identifier, go ahead and create one. Okay, so we're gonna throw a new project not found exception, and then we're gonna say project with ID, and then we're gonna do a single quote in here, then gonna put plus sign, then we're gonna pass the ID, then another plus sign, then double quote, single quote here. Project with ID does not exist. Okay, that's all we're saying. See, we have a more custom message for this one. So basically, if this is null, we know that we cannot create tasks towards a backlog that doesn't exist, and we cannot find tasks or a backlog out of a project that doesn't exist. So we're gonna restart our server, and now instead of getting an empty array, which is what we got here, then we get that this project doesn't exist, and this is very good, and this is gonna come in really handy when we start wiring this up on our React side of things. All right. So right now we have two operations that we have completed. We have completed the create. We have completed the read of all projects. Next in line, we have to complete the get one project task. Then obviously we have to update a project task, which in this case I think is going to be a little different than, and it's not going to be as straightforward as it was with the updating of the project for reasons that we'll explore later. And then of course we have to delete our project tasks. And then once we're done with that, we go right back to React. So stay tuned. We are making good progress. Thank you for joining.